Every country on Earth is in debt. That part isn't controversial anymore. It's background noise. What almost nobody stops to ask is the question that should make the entire room go quiet. If everyone owes money, who is everyone paying? At first, the numbers feel abstract. Trillions here, trillions there. The United States passes another debt milestone. Europe debates fiscal limits it never enforces. Japan carries obligations larger than its entire economy. The global total climbs higher each year, now so large that saying the number out loud doesn't clarify anything, it numbs it. But step away from the charts for a moment and think like a normal person. In real life, debt works one way. Someone borrows, someone lends. One side owes. The other side expects to be paid back. That logic collapses the moment you apply it to nations. Because no major country on Earth is preparing to repay what it owes. Not eventually. Not once growth returns. Not even in theory. Governments refinance old debt with new debt over and over again. Not because they're irresponsible, but because the system stops working the moment they try to do anything else. This isn't a secret. It's just rarely said out loud. Modern sovereign debt isn't designed to be repaid. It's designed to exist. When governments issue bonds, they aren't making a promise to clear a balance sheet. They're creating a financial object, something banks can hold, trade, and build other assets on top of. Over time, these bonds stopped being loans in the everyday sense and became the foundation of the financial system itself. Banks don't treat government bonds as risky IOUs. They treat them as safe assets, almost as good as cash. Pension funds rely on them. Insurance companies depend on them. Central banks use them as collateral to create new money. Entire markets are structured around the assumption that these debts will never disappear. This is where the story quietly turns upside down. Ask who owns America's debt. People imagine foreign powers, secret financiers, or rival nations pulling strings from afar. The reality is far less cinematic and far more revealing. Most U.S. debt is owned by Americans. By pension funds, retirement accounts, insurance pools, banks, and the Federal Reserve itself. In other words, the country owes money to structures that exist to support the country. The same pattern repeats across the world. Governments owe their own financial systems. Financial systems depend on government debt to function. And central banks sit in the middle, transforming bonds into money through balance sheet operations that look technical but change everything. Money in practice is no longer something backed by gold or production or even tax revenue in the short term. It's backed by confidence that tomorrow will look enough like today for the cycle to continue. That confidence is the real currency. This is why the idea of paying off the debt isn't just unrealistic, it's dangerous. If a major government actually attempted to repay its debt in full, it would drain the very assets that pensions, banks, and markets rely on. The safe collateral would vanish. Liquidity would freeze. The system would seize, not because money ran out, but because the promises holding it together were suddenly kept. The system isn't built for honesty. It's built for continuity. Central banks understand this better than anyone. When crises hit, financial crashes, pandemics, wars, they don't ask whether money exists. They create it by purchasing government debt, expanding balance sheets, and stabilizing markets with new promises layered on top of old ones. Debt doesn't shrink during emergencies. It grows because growth is how the system breathes. This is why global debt keeps rising faster than the global economy itself. It isn't a sign of collapse. It's a sign that debt has become the mechanism through which money enters the world. Without it, modern economies stall. With it, they survive at the cost of permanent obligation. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. There is no final creditor waiting at the end of the line. No single entity planning to collect. No moment where the bill comes due all at once. The creditor is the system itself, a network of institutions, expectations. and rollover schedules that only function as long as everyone agrees not to ask for the principal back. The real risk isn't default, it's disbelief. The moment confidence breaks, not in one country, but across many, the illusion of stability collapses into something very real. Inflation, currency, loss, social pressure, political extremism. Not because the math suddenly changed, but because people stopped trusting the promises underneath it. History shows this pattern again and again. Empires don't fall when they run out of money. They fall when the story supporting the money stops making sense to the people living inside it. Today's system is more sophisticated than anything that came before it. It's also more fragile because it depends less on repayment and more on faith that refinancing will always be possible. Debt isn't a burden governments plan to escape. It's a structure they manage, expand, and maintain. Money isn't something stored. It's something rolled forward. Once you understand that, words like deficit, borrowing, and national debt stop sounding technical and start sounding philosophical. They aren't about numbers. They're about belief, and belief, once shaken, is very hard to rebuild. That's the machine we live inside, and once you see it clearly, you never hear debt the same way again.